Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, watching the holographic display show the outer rim colonies under attack. The massive chamber buzzed with alien voices speaking in dozens of languages. Representatives from 847 different species filled the curved seats that rose up like a giant amphitheater. 5 years ago, Sarah had stood in this same spot during Earth's acceptance ceremony. She remembered the pride she felt when President Theron announced that humanity would join the galactic community. Earth was the newest member, the 847th species to gain a seat in the council. "We welcome our human friends," Theron had said that day. "Together we will build a better galaxy." Now Sarah wished she had never heard those words. On the display, red dots marked where the Devourers had attacked. The parasitic aliens moved from world to world, consuming everything in their path. They ate planets bare, leaving nothing but dead rock behind. 12 human colonies lay directly in their path. "The motion is before us," announced Council Fleet Admiral Zexai. His blue skin gleamed under the chamber lights and his forearms gestured at the tactical display. "We must make the hard choice to save the core worlds." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She knew what was coming. "The outer rim colonies will serve as a buffer," Zexai continued. "While the Devourers consume them, our main fleet will have time to prepare defenses around the core systems." "You're talking about sacrifice," said Representative Kamoth from the Altarian delegation. "Those are populated worlds." "Acceptable losses," Zexai replied coldly. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." Sarah stood up quickly. "Admiral, those colonies have 12 billion people. Human people. Our people." The chamber fell quiet. Sarah felt hundreds of alien eyes watching her. She had been Earth's voice for 5 years, but she had never spoken against a military decision before. "Ambassador Chen," President Theron said, gently, "we understand your concern, but humanity joined the Council recently. You must trust our experience in these matters." "Experience?" Sarah's voice got louder. "You're talking about letting an entire species get eaten alive." "Not an entire species," Admiral Zexai corrected. "Earth itself is safe. The core population will survive. The colonies were always a risk." Sarah looked around the chamber. She saw faces that had welcomed humanity with smiles. Now those same faces looked at her with cold calculation. To them, 12 billion humans were just numbers on a screen. "We can evacuate them," Sarah said desperately. "Give us ships. Give us time." "Impossible," Zexai replied. "Moving our fleet to evacuate the colonies would leave the core worlds defenseless. The Devourers would break through, then send a small fleet, anything." "The decision is made," President Theron said firmly. "All in favor of Strategic Defense Plan Omega?" Sarah watched in horror as representative after representative raised their hands. Species that had traded with humanity. Species that had called humans friends. Species that had benefited from human technology and culture. The vote was 823 in favor, 20 against. 1 abstention. Only Earth voted against sacrificing its own people. "The motion passes," Theron announced. "Admiral Zexai, implement the defense plan immediately." Sarah felt her legs go weak. "You can't do this. Those are families, children." "The galaxy has made its choice," Zexai said. "Your people's sacrifice will be remembered." 3 days later, Sarah stood in the emergency command center on Earth. The screen showed evacuation ships racing toward the doomed colonies. But something was wrong. Council ships blocked their path. "They're not letting us through," reported Captain Williams from the rescue ship Mercy. "Council vessels are maintaining a blockade. They won't respond to our signals." General Martinez slammed his fist on the control panel. "Those are our people up there." On the main screen, they watched the final transmission from New Geneva Colony. A young mother held her daughter while creatures poured through the streets behind them. The woman looked directly into the camera. "Tell Earth we tried to be good galactic citizens," she said. "Tell them we believed in the Council's promises." The transmission cut to static as the Devourers reached the communication center. Sarah stared at the empty screen. 12 billion people. Gone. Not because the galaxy couldn't save them, but because it chose not to. Admiral Zexhi's face appeared on another screen. Ambassador Chen, please return to the council chambers. We must discuss Earth's continued cooperation. Sarah looked at the Admiral's cold blue face. Behind him she could see the lights of council ships that had watched human colonies die. Our continued cooperation? Sarah asked quietly. Of course. Earth is still a valued member of the galactic community. This unfortunate incident doesn't change that. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest, something hard and sharp like broken glass. Admiral, she said, you've made a grave mistake. I beg your pardon. You think you know humanity. You think we're just another species you can use and throw away. Sarah's voice was calm now, deadly calm. You're wrong. Ambassador, I hardly think. You voted to feed our children to monsters, Sarah continued. You blocked our rescue ships. You forced us to watch our families die for your greater good. Zexhi's four arms crossed defensively. The council made a strategic decision based on. The council made an enemy, Sarah interrupted. You don't know what humans do when someone hurts our family. You're about to find out. She cut the transmission. General Martinez stepped up beside. Sarah, what are you thinking? Sarah looked at the tactical display showing Earth's position in council space. Humanity had spent 5 years building trade routes, establishing colonies, and integrating with galactic society. They had followed every rule, paid every tax, and contributed to every council project. Remember when we first met the council? Sarah asked. They were amazed by our ship designs, said they were too complex, required too many crew members. They said our technology was primitive but interesting, Martinez replied. They also said we were too emotional, too aggressive, too willing to sacrifice for each other. Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. They thought those were weaknesses. What are you planning? Sarah walked to the window that looked out over Earth's orbital shipyards. Construction crews were already working around the clock, not on trade ships or exploration vessels, but on something else. Something the council had never seen before. We're going home, General. All of us. Every human in council space comes back to Earth. A complete withdrawal? Complete, Sarah confirmed. And then we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you betray humanity. She pressed a button on the control panel. Across Earth, emergency broadcasts began transmitting to every human ship, station, and settlement in the galaxy. Attention. All human citizens. Sarah's voice echoed across the stars. By order of the Earth government, you are commanded to return home immediately. Pack only what you need. Leave everything else. Martinez frowned. Sarah, if we abandon our infrastructure, the council will what? Punish us? Sarah laughed bitterly. They already fed our children to monsters. What worse could they do? She looked back at the tactical display. Earth sat alone in the galaxy now, surrounded by species that had voted to sacrifice human lives. They wanted to see what humanity would do when pushed to the wall, Sarah said softly. They're about to find out. In the depths of Earth's secret shipyards, construction crews worked on projects the council had never suspected. Humanity had been preparing for this day since they first met aliens who thought some lives were more valuable than others. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in the underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching humanity's greatest secret take shape. The cavern stretched for miles in every direction, carved out over 5 years of careful preparation. Above ground, the council thought Earth was a peaceful agricultural world. Below ground, humanity had been building for war. How long until the first ships are ready? Asked Admiral Chen, Sarah's younger brother who had returned from his post, commanding Earth's merchant fleet. 3 months for the first squadron, Marcus replied. 6 months for the main battle fleet. He gestured at the massive construction bays where human workers swarmed over the skeletal frames of warships. We've been stockpiling materials for years. Admiral Chen walked along the observation deck studying the ships taking shape below. They looked nothing like council vessels. Where alien ships were smooth and automated, These were angular and complex. Every surface bristled with weapons, sensors, and communication arrays. "The Council thinks our ship designs are primitive," Chen said. "They think requiring large crews is a weakness," Marcus agreed. "They prefer automated systems with minimal organic operators." "They're wrong," Marcus smiled grimly. "Very wrong. Our ships don't just need large crews. They're designed around them. Every human aboard becomes part of the vessel's nervous system." In the main construction bay, Captain Elena Vasquez supervised the installation of the primary weapons array on the lead battleship. She had lost her daughter Maria on New Geneva Colony. The girl had been only 8 years old. "Captain," called Chief Engineer Rodriguez, "the neural interface network is ready for testing." Elena nodded. Unlike Council ships that relied on artificial intelligence, human vessels used a different approach. Hundreds of crew members would link their minds directly to the ship's systems through neural interfaces. The result was a level of coordination and response time no automated system could match. "What's our crew requirement?" Elena asked. 1,500 for full combat operations, Rodriguez replied. "Compare that to a Council ship of similar size that needs maybe 50. And they think that's inefficient. They've never seen humans work together when they're angry." 3 months later, the first human warship emerged from the hidden construction bays. The Council had no idea it existed. Earth's official reports still listed only merchant vessels and exploration ships. The battleship Retribution hung in space like a dark promise, its hull painted with the names of everyone who died on New Geneva. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, her neural interface crown glowing softly as she connected with the ship's systems. Around her, 1,500 crew members did the same. The bridge hummed with quiet concentration as human minds merged with the vessel's electronic nervous system. "All stations report ready," announced Commander Singh. Elena felt the ship respond to her thoughts. Not like flying a normal vessel, but like becoming one. Every weapon, every sensor, every defensive system was an extension of her will. And through the neural network, she felt the presence of her entire crew. Their anger, their determination, their shared hunger for justice. "Course laid in for Admiral Zexai's personal command ship," reported the navigator. "Time to show the Council what they've awakened," Elena said. The Retribution vanished into hyperspace, invisible to Council sensors. It carried no identification, signals, no energy signatures that would mark it as human. The Council had never seen this technology before. They had no way to track it. On Earth, more ships were launching every day. The Vengeance, crewed by survivors from the Proxima colony. The Justice, manned by families who had lost relatives. The Reckoning, commanded by a captain whose entire extended family had been on the Outer Rim. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. They weren't professional soldiers. They were teachers, farmers, engineers, and doctors who had watched their loved ones die while Council ships stood by and did nothing. Dr. Marcus Webb monitored the fleet launch from his command center. Screens showed dozens of battleships emerging from hidden bases across the solar system. The Council thought humanity had maybe 100 small vessels. The reality was 500 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a planet. "Dr. Webb?" called his assistant. "We're receiving surrender offers from 17 Council species." Marcus frowned. "Surrender offers? The war hasn't even started yet." Apparently, some of the smaller species figured out what's happening. They're offering to switch sides. "What's our response?" Admiral Chen sent a reply. "We remember who voted to kill our children. We also remember who voted to save them. Choose your side carefully." Marcus nodded. Humanity wasn't interested in conquering the galaxy. They wanted justice, and they wanted everyone to know the price of betraying Earth. In Council space, alien governments were beginning to panic. Human merchant ships had vanished overnight. Human technicians had abandoned their posts. Human-operated facilities had gone dark. Species that had come to depend on human expertise suddenly found their infrastructure failing. The Vegan trade. Routes collapsed when human navigators disappeared. The Centaurian medical centers shut down when human doctors left. The Altarian mining operation stopped when human engineers vanished. President Thyron called an emergency council session. "Where are the humans?" he demanded. Admiral Zexhai stood at his tactical display, studying reports from across the galaxy. "They've gone home, every single one. Complete withdrawal from council space." "Economic warfare," muttered Representative Kamath. "They're trying to force us to negotiate." "No," said Zexhai slowly. "This isn't economics. This is preparation." "For what?" Before Zexhai could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the council chambers. The Admiral's tactical display flashed red as emergency signals flooded in. From across the galaxy. "What's happening?" Theron demanded. Zexhai stared at the display in disbelief. "Unknown ships are attacking our forces. Multiple contacts, unknown design. They're moving faster than our scanners can track." "How many ships?" "Unknown. They appear out of nowhere, strike, and vanish. Our forces can't get a lock on them." The display council installations were going dark one by one. Not destroyed completely, but crippled. Weapons platforms disabled. Communication arrays smashed. Defense grids offline. "Are they trying to conquer us?" asked a terrified representative. "No," Zexhai said grimly. "They're hunting me." The Admiral's personal command ship, the Dominion, was the most powerful vessel in the Council fleet. It had enough firepower to destroy a moon and shields that could withstand a supernova. Zexhai had used it to enforce the Council's will across the galaxy for 50 years. Now, as he stood on its bridge, he felt fear for the first time in decades. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we're detecting an energy signature. Unknown configuration." On screen. The view screen shimmered, and suddenly they were looking at a human warship. It hung in space like a metallic predator, its hull scarred with the names of the dead. Weapon ports glowed with barely contained energy. "Impossible," whispered Zexhai. "Humans don't have ships like that." "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "they're transmitting." "Put it through." Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on screen. Behind her, Zexhai could see a bridge full of humans working in perfect synchronization. Their movements were too coordinated, too precise. It was like watching a single organism with multiple bodies. "Admiral Zexhai," Elena said calmly. "I am Captain Vasquez of the Earth vessel Retribution. You killed my daughter." Zexhai straightened. "Captain, I follow council orders. The decision to sacrifice the colonies was made democratically. You blocked our evacuation ships. I followed orders." Elena smiled, but it was the cold smile of an apex predator. "So did I. Earth has new orders now." The Retribution opened fire. The Dominion's shields flared as human weapons struck home. Admiral Zexhai gripped his command chair as the massive ship shuddered under the assault. His tactical displays showed impossible readings. The human ship was firing faster than any vessel should be able to coordinate its weapons. "Return fire," Zexhai ordered. The Dominion's massive guns swiveled toward the Retribution. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced out toward the human vessel. The beams struck nothing but empty space. "Where did they go?" Zexhai demanded. "Unknown, sir. They vanished just before our weapons fired." The Retribution reappeared directly above the Dominion, somehow having moved faster than the Council ship's sensors could track. More weapon fire hammered down on the flagship's shields. On the Retribution's bridge, Captain Elena Vasquez felt her ship move like an extension of her own body. Through the neural interface, 1,500 crew members acted as one organism. The weapons crew didn't just fire the guns, they became the guns. The navigation team didn't just plot courses, they became the ship's movement. "Shields at 60%, reported Commander Singh. "Their weapons are strong, but they're too slow," Elena replied. "They're fighting like a machine. We're fighting like humans." The Council had built their ships around artificial intelligence and automation. Every decision went through computer systems that calculated optimal responses. It was efficient, but it was predictable. Human ships worked differently. 1,500 minds linked together could think faster than any computer. They could anticipate, adapt, and improvise in ways no artificial system could match. Target their weapon control centers, Elena commanded. The Retribution's guns spoke again. This time the energy beams didn't just hit the Dominion's shields. They found weak points, stress fractures, and design flaws that the ship's own computers didn't even know existed. Human intuition, guided by 1,500 years of collective combat experience, struck with surgical precision. The Dominion's forward weapons array exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Impossible, HFY snarled. How did they know that junction was vulnerable? His tactical officer looked confused. Sir, our own systems didn't detect that weakness. Then how? Admiral, interrupted his communications officer. They're transmitting again. Elena's face appeared on screen. Behind her, HFY could see the human crew working with frightening efficiency. No wasted motion, no confusion, no fear. Admiral, Elena said, I want you to understand something. This isn't about conquest. This isn't about territory or resources. This is about justice. You're terrorists, HFY spat. The Council will hunt you across the galaxy. The Council? Elena laughed coldly. Admiral, look at your tactical display. Really look at it. HFY turned to his displays. Red warning signals flashed across the galaxy. Every Council fleet base was under attack. Every major installation was going dark. Dozens of Council ships were broadcasting distress signals. How many ships do you have? HFY whispered. Enough, Elena replied. We've had 5 years to prepare while you thought we were just farmers and merchants. Every human who came home brought technical knowledge. Every human who lost family in your betrayal volunteered for this fleet. The Retribution's weapons fired again. This time they targeted the Dominion's engines. The massive Council ship lurched as its main power systems failed. You want to know what makes humans different? Elena continued. We don't abandon our own. We don't sacrifice our children for politics, and we never forget who betrays us. What do you want? HFY demanded. I want you to watch. More human ships appeared around the crippled Dominion. The Vengeance, commanded by survivors from Proxima Colony. The Justice, crewed by families seeking revenge for their dead. The Reckoning, whose captain had lost his parents, siblings, and children in the Council's betrayal, but they didn't fire. They just waited. Commander Morrison, Elena called to the Justice. Are your boarding parties ready? Ready and eager, Captain, came the reply. HFY felt his blood turn cold. You're going to board us? Just long, enough to collect evidence, Elena said. Your ship's computers contain records of every vote, every order, every decision that led to our people's deaths. The galaxy is going to see exactly what the Council chose to do. Human boarding pods, launched from the surrounding ships. They moved too fast for the Dominion's defensive systems to track. Council soldiers tried to resist, but they had never faced humans in close combat before. The aliens fought like civilized beings, following rules of engagement and trying to minimize casualties. The humans fought like humans, protecting each other, working as teams, and willing to sacrifice everything to complete their mission. 20 minutes later, Commander Jake Morrison of the Justice stood on the Dominion's bridge. His boarding team had captured the ship's computer core and taken Admiral HFY prisoner. Captain Vasquez, Morrison reported, we have the data. Every vote, every communication, every order. The galaxy will see what really happened. Elena nodded. Admiral HFY, you're going to help us send a message. I'll never cooperate with terrorists. You won't have to. Elena smiled grimly. We're going to put you in an escape pod and launch you toward New Geneva Colony. What's left of it? HFY's forearms trembled. That's a dead system. There's nothing there. Exactly. You're going to float there and look at what your strategic sacrifice actually meant. You're going to see 12 billion graves and think about whether it was worth it. The Council will rescue me. The Council is a little busy right now, Elena replied. They're trying to figure out why their entire fleet is being hunted by ships that shouldn't exist. Across the galaxy, Human battle groups struck with precision and fury. They didn't try to hold territory or establish control. They simply destroyed anything that had supported the betrayal of Earth. The orbital defense platforms around Theron's homeworld exploded in sequence. The Council's main shipyard became a field of twisted metal. The communication hub that had broadcast the order to sacrifice human colonies went silent forever. But it wasn't random destruction. Every target was chosen carefully. Every strike sent a message. The humans were demonstrating that they could reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. They chose. "Admiral," Elena said as Council soldiers loaded Zexhai into an escape pod. "When you're floating in the graveyard of New Geneva, I want you to remember something. This isn't about revenge. This is about making sure it never happens again." "You can't fight the entire galaxy," Zexhai said desperately. "We're not fighting the galaxy," Elena replied. "We're fighting tyrants. There's a difference." The escape pod launched toward the dead system where 12 billion humans had been sacrificed for the greater good. Zexhai would spend the next several days contemplating what that sacrifice really meant. As the human fleet prepared to jump to their next target, Elena looked around her bridge. Her crew worked with quiet determination, linked together by technology and purpose. They had no desire to rule the galaxy. They just wanted to make sure nobody ever again voted to feed children to monsters. "Next target, Captain?" asked Commander Singh. Elena studied the tactical display showing Council positions. Across the galaxy, red dots marked every world that had voted for humanity's sacrifice, every leader who had supported the betrayal, every system that had benefited from human deaths. "All of them," Elena said quietly. "Every single one. The galaxy voted to kill our families. Now they get to learn what that choice cost them." The retribution vanished into hyperspace, followed by hundreds of other human warships. Behind them, they left the burning wreckage of the Council's most powerful vessel and a message broadcast across the galaxy. The message was simple. "We remember who voted to kill our children. We're coming for you." In Council space, alien governments watched the broadcast and felt fear crawl up their spines. They had thought humans were weak, emotional, and primitive. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Dr. Cathet huddled in her laboratory on Centauri Prime, frantically typing her research report. As the galaxy's leading expert on human psychology, she had been trying to understand Earth's terrifying transformation. What she had discovered made her hands shake as she typed. "Urgent analysis, human military capability assessment," she wrote. "Previous estimates catastrophically underestimated human warfare potential. Humans are persistence predators on a galactic scale. They do not stop. They do not tire. They do not forgive." Outside her laboratory window, she could see the orbital defense platforms burning. The human fleet had arrived at Centauri Prime 6 hours ago. They hadn't demanded surrender. They hadn't issued ultimatums. They had simply begun dismantling the system's defenses piece by piece. Cathet continued typing. "Council strategic doctrine assumed humans would fight like other species, for territory, resources, or political advantage. This assumption was wrong. Humans fight for emotional reasons that make no tactical sense, but give them frightening psychological advantages." On her display screens, she watched human ships work with methodical precision. They didn't attack randomly. Each target was chosen for maximum symbolic impact. The shipyard where Council vessels had been built to blockade human rescue ships. The communication array that had broadcast orders to sacrifice human colonies. The orbital fortress that had housed Admiral Zexhai's staff. "Human ship design reflects their psychology," Cathet wrote. "Large crews create emotional bonds between operators and vessels. Shared neural interfaces make ships extensions of collective human will. Result: vessels that fight with coordination impossible for automated systems." President Theron's image appeared on her communication screen. The Council leader looked exhausted. Behind him, Cathet could see emergency sessions running around the clock. "Dr. Cathet," Theron said urgently, "we need your analysis. How do we negotiate with them?" Cathet looked at her data. Psychological profiles, behavioral assessments, combat recordings from dozens of engagements. The picture they painted was terrifying. "You don't," she said simply. "What do you mean?" "Mr. President, humans don't want anything from us. They're not trying to conquer territory or gain resources. They're administering punishment." "For what?" "The colonial sacrifice was a legal council decision." Cathette pulled up video recordings from the human attacks, ship after ship broadcasting the names of dead children as they fired their weapons, crews working in perfect coordination, driven by shared grief and anger. "Sir, humans form emotional bonds that other species don't understand. When you voted to sacrifice their colonies, you didn't just kill 12 billion individuals. You attacked their family. All of them. That's irrational. That's humanity." Cathette highlighted sections of her report. Humans evolved as pack hunters who protected their young above all else. They've applied that psychology to an entire species. Every human considers every other human family. Theron stared at the analysis. Then what do they want? Justice, revenge, to make sure this never happens again. Cathette looked out at the burning orbital platforms. They want us to understand that there are consequences for betraying Earth. The human fleet moved through Centauri Prime's defensive grid like a force of nature. Council ships tried to engage them, but found themselves outmatched at every level. Human vessels anticipated their movements, adapted to their tactics, and struck with surgical precision. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the Retribution's bridge, watching the Council's capital world grow larger on the main screen. Around her, 1,500 crew members worked in perfect harmony through their neural interfaces. She could feel their thoughts, their anger, their determination. "Status report," Elena commanded. "Orbital defenses are neutralized," reported Commander Singh. "Council fleet elements are withdrawing to defensive positions around the planet. Any surrender offers? 17 species have switched sides and are offering to join us. 43 more are requesting separate peace negotiations." Elena nodded. The galaxy was fracturing as species realized the Council could no longer protect them. Some aliens genuinely regretted voting for humanity's sacrifice. Others just wanted to avoid Earth's wrath. What about the core Council species? Still defiant. "President Theron is demanding we submit to galactic law." Elena almost laughed. "Galactic law? They voted to feed our children to monsters and they want to talk about law?" "Captain," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. President Theron wants to negotiate." "Put him through." Theron's image appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Cathette and other advisors looked terrified. The council chambers that had once seemed so grand now looked like a bunker. "Captain Vasquez," Theron began, "the council is prepared to offer reparations for the unfortunate loss of your colonial populations. We can discuss compensation and..." "Compensation?" Elena's voice was deadly quiet. "You think you can pay for the lives of 12 billion people?" "We can negotiate terms that..." "President Theron," Elena interrupted, "I'm going to explain something to you. When you voted to sacrifice our colonies, you made a choice. You decided that human lives were worth less than your convenience. It was a strategic military decision." "It was genocide." Elena's crew worked around her, targeting the planet's military installations with frightening precision. "And now you're going to learn what happens when you commit genocide against humanity. The galaxy will never accept human rule." "We don't want to rule the galaxy," Elena said. "We want justice." The human fleet began orbital bombardment of military targets. Not civilian areas, but every council military installation on Centauri Prime. Each strike was announced with the name of a human who had died in the betrayal. "This is for Maria Vasquez, age 8, killed on New Geneva." A missile struck the council's military academy. "This is for Dr. James Chen, killed on Proxima Colony while treating refugees." Energy beams destroyed the orbital command center. "This is for the entire Rodriguez family, grandmother to newborn, killed on Europa Station." The Council's intelligence headquarters vanished in a ball of plasma. Cathet watched from her laboratory as humanity methodically erased every symbol of Council military power. The aliens had sophisticated weapons and strong defenses, but they fought like machines. The humans fought like humans, emotional, determined, and absolutely willing to sacrifice everything for justice. They're not even trying to occupy us, Cathet realized. They just want us to remember. President Theron broadcast surrender offers, peace negotiations, and promises of trials for war criminals. The humans ignored all of it. They had come to deliver a message, and they would deliver it completely. "This is Fleet Admiral Chen," came a broadcast from the human flagship. "We are not conquerors. We are not interested in ruling your worlds or controlling your governments. We came here for one reason: to make sure you understand the price of betraying humanity." The bombardment continued. Military bases, weapons factories, naval academies. Everything that had made the Council's betrayal possible was systematically destroyed. "You voted to sacrifice our children," Admiral Chen continued. "You watched our families die for your politics. You blocked our rescue ships and called it strategy. Today you learn what that choice cost you." Species across the galaxy watched the destruction of Centauri Prime and realized their old world was ending. The Council had ruled for thousands of years through consensus and cooperation. Now they faced an enemy that didn't want to negotiate. "The Council is dissolved," Admiral Chen announced. "Any government that supported the genocide of human colonies is considered a legitimate target. Any species that wishes to avoid Earth's wrath should choose their allegiances carefully." Cathet looked at her research data one more time. She had spent years studying human psychology, but she had never understood the true implications. Humans weren't just another spacefaring species. They were something the galaxy had never encountered before. A people who would burn down civilization itself, rather than let injustice go unpunished. "Final assessment," she typed with trembling hands. "Humanity cannot be defeated by conventional means. They fight not for victory but for principles. Recommendation: complete submission to human demands. Alternative: extinction." As the human fleet prepared to jump to their next target, Elena Vasquez looked out at the burning remains of the Council's capital. Centauri Prime would survive, but it would never forget the day humanity came calling. "Where to next, Captain?" asked Commander Singh. Elena studied the star charts showing every world that had voted for humanity's sacrifice, every leader who had supported the betrayal, every system that had benefited from human deaths. "All of them," she said. "Every government that voted to kill our people. Every leader who called our children acceptable losses. They wanted to see what happens when you betray humanity." She smiled, but it was the cold smile of justice finally delivered. Now they know. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of the Council chambers on Centauri Prime. Broken glass crunched under her boots as she walked through the hall where 847 species had once voted to sacrifice human children. Now only 50 species remained loyal to the old Council. The rest had either switched sides or fled to neutral space. "Ma'am," reported Commander Williams, "we've received formal surrender from the Altarian government. That makes 212 species that have officially withdrawn from the Council alliance." Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the galaxy 6 months after humanity's war had begun. Red zones marked former Council territory now under human protection. Green zones showed species that had allied with Earth. Yellow zones indicated neutral systems that wanted no part in the conflict. "Any word from President Theron?" "Still refusing to surrender. He's holed up in the emergency bunker beneath the Capitol with about 30 die-hard supporters." Sarah walked to the great window that looked out over Centauri Prime's capital city. The civilian areas were untouched, but every government building and military installation lay in ruins. Humans had been very precise in their destruction. They wanted the galaxy to remember, not to suffer. "Admiral," called Dr. Cathet from behind her. Sarah turned to see the alien scientist approaching nervously. Cathet had become an unofficial liaison between humanity and the surviving Council species. Her research on human psychology had proven surprisingly accurate. "Dr. Cathet, What can I do for you? Admiral, I've been authorized by the remaining council species to ask about your terms for peace. Sarah looked at the alien scientist for a long moment. Cathet was one of the few council members who had voted against sacrificing the human colonies. Her species, the Nixari, had actually tried to send rescue ships before being blocked by council forces. Our terms haven't changed, Sarah said. Complete dissolution of the council, trials for every leader who voted for genocide, and guarantees that no species will ever again be deemed expendable. The trials are problematic, Cathet said carefully. Many of the leaders claim they were following standard council procedure. Following orders? Sarah's voice was cold. Dr. Cathet, my species fought a war 200 years ago where people used that same excuse for genocide. We didn't accept it then. We won't accept it now. But what about the future? The galaxy needs some form of government. Sarah walked back to the tactical display. She could see the human fleet positions across known space. 500 warships, each crewed by volunteers who had lost family in the Council's betrayal. They weren't conquerors. They were guardians. The galaxy will have government, Sarah said. Just not the kind that votes to feed children to monsters. 3 days later, Sarah stood before the assembled representatives of the surviving galactic species. The meeting was held on Earth in the memorial hall built over the ruins of New Geneva Colony. The walls were covered with the names of 12 billion dead. You all know why we're here, Sarah began. The Council is dead. The question is, what comes next? President Theron sat in the prisoner's dock, his once proud uniform replaced by simple clothes. Around him sat the other council leaders who had been captured during humanity's campaign. They would face trial for genocide within the week. The human species proposes the Covenant of Equals, Sarah continued. A galactic organization where no species can be voted expendable, where military intervention requires unanimous consent, where every member has equal voice regardless of size or power. Representative Kamoth, one of the few aliens who had consistently opposed the colonial sacrifice, raised his hand. Admiral, what role would humanity play in this new organization? Sarah smiled grimly. We would serve as the immune system. I don't understand. Dr. Cathet's research was correct. Humans are persistence predators. We don't stop. We don't tire. We don't forgive genocide. Sarah gestured to the memorial walls around them. If any government in the new covenant tries to sacrifice innocence for political gain, they will face Earth's wrath. You're talking about making yourselves. Galactic Police Mao, protested one of the remaining council loyalists. We're talking about making sure this never happens again, Sarah replied. The council ruled through consensus and cooperation. When that consensus decided some lives were worthless, 12 billion people died. The covenant will prevent that. How? Simple. Any species that votes to sacrifice innocence becomes humanity's enemy. Any government that commits genocide faces Earth's fleet. Any leader who thinks some lives are worth less than others gets to explain that philosophy to Captain Vasquez and her crew. The assembled representatives looked around nervously. They had all seen what humanity's fleet could do. The precision destruction of council military assets. The systematic hunting of war criminals. The absolute refusal to accept surrender until justice was served. What about expansion? Asked the Vegan trade representative. Exploration, scientific advancement. All handled by the Covenant species working together, Sarah replied. Humans will focus on what we do best, making sure tyrants face consequences. Over the next several weeks, the framework of the new galactic order took shape. The Covenant of Equals would govern through cooperation, but with strict safeguards against the kind of calculated genocide the Council had committed. Species could leave the Covenant freely. They could refuse to participate in military actions. They could govern themselves however they chose, but they could not vote to sacrifice other species' children. The deterrent effect should be sufficient, Dr. Cathet reported to the assembly. Human psychology makes them uniquely suited to this role. They form emotional bonds with individuals they've never met. They fight for principles rather than territory. They never forget betrayal. In other words, said Representative Kamoth. "They're the galaxy's conscience." "More than that," Cathet replied. "They're the galaxy's vengeance, the promise that evil actions have consequences." The trials of the former council leaders were broadcast across the galaxy, evidence of the decision to sacrifice human colonies, records of the orders to block rescue ships, testimony from survivors who had watched their families die while council forces stood by. President Thyron maintained his innocence to the end. "I followed established council procedure," he insisted. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." "Tell that to 8-year-old Maria Vasquez," Prosecutor Elena Vasquez replied. "Tell that to the babies who died on Proxima Colony. Tell that to the families who burned alive while your ships watched." The verdicts were unanimous. Guilty of genocide, guilty of crimes against sentience, guilty of betraying the sacred trust between governments and the people they claimed to protect. 2 years after the war began, Sarah Chen watched from Earth's orbital platform as a new kind of ship prepared to launch. Not a warship, but a colony vessel. The UESS New Beginning was heading to establish humanity's first settlement in the former council space. But this wasn't a conquest. The ship carried human families who would settle alongside the Kavar, a species that had risked everything to help evacuate human refugees during the betrayal. The mixed colony would be a symbol of the new galactic order. Captain Elena Vasquez, now promoted to admiral, joined Sarah at the observation window. Both women had lost family in the council's betrayal. Both had dedicated their lives to making sure it never happened again. "How many ships are we building now?" Elena asked. 500 more over the next 10 years, Sarah replied. "The galaxy is bigger than we thought. We need to make sure our message reaches everywhere." "And that message is?" Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking of the 12 billion graves on the memorial worlds. That some species remember, that justice matters, that when someone votes to feed children to monsters, there are consequences. The New Beginning launched into hyperspace, carrying hope for a better future. Behind it, Earth's shipyards continued building the vessels that would enforce that future. Not ships of conquest, but ships of protection. Humanity had learned what they were truly good at. Not just survival, but making sure the innocent could survive too. They had become the galaxy's promise that evil would not go unpunished. In the depths of space, automated beacons broadcast a message to any species that might encounter them. The Covenant of Equals welcomes all sentient life. But know this: if you harm the innocent, if you sacrifice the weak for your convenience, if you think some lives are worth less than others, you will face humanity's judgment. "We remember who stood with us," the message continued, "and we remember who didn't." Admiral Sarah Chen watched the stars and knew that somewhere out there, other species were making choices. Some would choose compassion and cooperation. Others would choose tyranny and genocide. Those who chose wisely would find humans to be loyal allies and steadfast friends. Those who chose poorly would discover why the galaxy now trembled when Earth's war fleets darkened their skies. The Council had betrayed humanity once. The galaxy would not make that mistake again. Justice had many faces, but in the cold depths of space, it looked remarkably human.